The government has eased some property cooling measures for the residential market. Now, these include relaxing the seller's stamp duty as well as the total debt servicing ratio framework.
Now, at the same time, it introduced a new additional conveyance duty to plug a loophole that currently allows certain property buyers to avoid stamp duty. Right now, when a residential property is being transacted directly, a seller may be taxed with a seller's stamp duty, while the buyer is subject to a buyer's stamp duty and additional buyer stamp duty.
Now, if the property is transacted indirectly, for example through buying shares in a property holding entity, this incurs just a 0.2% tax. To address this, buyers and sellers who are significant owners of the holding entity will be subject to an additional conveyance duty.
Meanwhile, all home sellers will now pay a lower stamp duty. The seller's stamp duty will be cut by 4 percentage points, and the holding period will be shortened to 3 years from the current 4 years. The government also eased the total debt servicing ratio slightly in response to feedback that it limits the flexibility of some borrowers to take loans against the value of their properties. The changes will all take effect from midnight.
And for more, Nicole Tan is here with us in studio. Nicole, let's start with the new additional conveyance duty. Did the government explain why it's necessary?
Well, Don, the additional conveyance duty was introduced to address a differential in the tax rate that currently exists when you buy a property, whether it's directly or indirectly through acquiring shares of a property holding entity. So when you buy a property directly, the buyer is subject to a buyer's stamp duty as well as the additional buyer's stamp duty. But when you buy it indirectly through a property holding entity, the buyer pays a much lower stamp duty of just 0.2% of share transfers. So the government's decided that it's timely now to close this stamp duty differential, and Minister Lawrence Wong said in Parliament that it's something that the government has been looking at for quite a while now.
This is not done in haste. If this was done in haste, we would have probably done it much earlier, but we took time to study, to carefully consider the measures before putting it together. We are doing it 3 sittings in one, not to rush through, but because of the market sensitivity of the measure.
Now, Nicole, this loophole that you were talking about earlier, how often has it been used by property buyers or sellers?
Well, John, I spoke to property consultants earlier to give me a sense of who's actually making such transactions, and some cited high-profile cases where a bulk purchase of upmarket residential property was purchased through a property holding entity or the issuance of equity shares. But overall, Minister Lawrence Wong pointed out in Parliament that it can't be determined how prevalent or common these transactions are, simply because the buyers and sellers don't have to declare when they make such transactions. And Minister Wong also said he didn't want to speculate at this point.
Right.
I wouldn't want to speculate on the impact. We know that there is a differential which we are closing today. We believe it's the right thing to do, and we had taken time and effort to study this, to make sure that whatever measures we are putting in place is balanced, is appropriate, and does not also impact negatively on legitimate business transactions.
Now, aside from this new stamp duty, the government has also relaxed the seller's stamp duty and the total debt servicing ratio. It's the first time the government is easing property cooling measures since it started implementing them back in 2009, in fact. So how significant is this, and can we expect to see more?
Well, economists I spoke to earlier, Don, said that these measures shouldn't be seen as broad-based easing in response to a weak property market, but rather as measures to address specific factors. So as the government has said earlier, the current set of property measures remain necessary to promote a sustainable property market and financial prudence of households. So Singapore private property prices have been on a cushioned decline in the last 3 years, and with this stabilization of prices, there's been a pickup of demand for property. So property consultants say any further relaxation of the cooling measures could unravel or reverse some of the progress that we've made in the last 3 years. So unless we see a sharp increase in interest rates or deterioration in unemployment, property consultants say the cooling measures are likely to stay.
All right, Nicole, thanks so much for breaking that down for us. I appreciate that. We've been speaking with Nicole Tan live with us in studio.